Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our culture unit for the month of April, and we're going to Deutschland, or Germany. And, of course, if you think of Germany, you'll think of the luxury cars that everybody seems to own here in Taiwan. But there's more to Germany than expensive cars. The Germans kind of have this sense of order that kind of borders on the insane, basically. It seems like they're so obsessed with order, you just want to strangle them by the neck and say, would you knock it off? Would you mellow out?
Yeah, you could say their culture isn't very 随便. Oh no, it's the opposite. They're very punctual. They're very accurate. And it's something that has been with them so long, it's just part of the culture. So when they meet up with people, for example, from South America, wow, such a big difference. People in South America, they'll show up, an hour late for things, and they think it's just fine. So if you're working with a German or a German company, I would advise you to be very punctual. It's a sign of a lack of respect if you're late for things. But yeah, they have their own way of doing things. And I think they're very precise. But if you're not used to it, it's very different. I do like the fact that Germany is quite clean. And I love their food. They have one dish, Tom, that reminds me of Pai Gu Fan here, and that's called the Wiener Schnitzel dish, which is a pork chop that they kind of beat down and then they deep fry it. It's very good.
I'm sure it is.
Anything deep fried is great, but I do like pork chops.
Well, despite the fact that Germans are quite orderly, the handful of Germans I've known are pretty mellow people. They're pretty laid back and relaxed. So, yeah, it's pretty easy to make friends with Germans, but do be aware that they do have this kind of order in their country that they value.
I do not think it's easy to make friends with Germans.
Yeah, I should back up there. I've met some traveling, and they seem kind of fun to travel with, but yeah.
They're probably more open, but if you go to Germany, they will be very polite with you, but they have to get to know you first in order to trust you. So, yeah, it's just a different culture. Americans are really open. Hi, how are you? And they're more, they wait and see to see if they want to be friends with you, but you can trust them. If you have a German friend, you're probably friends for life.
Yeah, you could probably say a similar thing about the Japanese, too. You need to get to know them before they become your friend. So let's find out what this Ordnung muss sein is all about. So let's read through the entire contents of our lesson now, and we'll be right back to discuss it. Imagine yourself in Berlin, Germany. Like any urban center, it's a riot of different sounds, sights, and people. But observe closely enough, and you might be surprised by the conduct of the locals. You'll find less jaywalking, fewer illegally parked cars, rigorously enforced quiet hours, and a certain strictness to every administrative procedure. These all demonstrate the German virtue of Ordnung. While this simply translates into order in other languages, in truth, it indicates a cultural value that is completely instinctive to Germans. The phrase Ordnung muss sein, there must be order, dates back around 500 years to renowned religious reformer Martin Luther. He proclaimed in his writings, Ordnung muss sein unter den Leuten, there must be order among the people. But scholars say this referred to submission to church authority rather than order in daily life. This latter interpretation of Ordnung was made world famous by German President Paul von Hindenburg in 1934. For Germans today, this notion is so inherent that it needs no discussion at all. They don't think about it any more than someone thinks about grammar while they're speaking, says German culture expert Christina Rutgers. However, Germans also have a motto that order is only half of life and disorder the other half. Even stuffy Germany has room for disorder, as evidenced by its frenzied sports games and thriving underground music scene. However, unwritten rules still confine disorder to certain contexts. In Berlin, for example, people can go nude, paint graffiti, or even take part in illegal activities as long as they're in the correct place to do so. Ordnung is less about following the rules to the letter and more about knowing the right time and place to do things. This elaborate dance of order and disorder reveals that German society, like any other, is complex, and Ordnung represents just one part.
Okay, guys, let's dive in. This is our culture unit. We're going to spend some time with Germans today. Very fun. When I was younger, my college choir went on tour, and we spent quite a bit of time in Germany. And I met some cute boys. There are cute boys over there, ladies. So if you're interested, you should take a little trip to Germany. And they're very polite. So we've got Ordnung muss sein, the German value of order. A lot of cultures value different things. So here we're saying they really like the fact that life should be arranged in a way that makes sense. Not a lot of time is wasted. You use your time effectively. It's not a bunch of mess going on all the time. There's a lot of order. You'll find that their trains run on time. That's very important. That's important to the Japanese as well, we know. But yeah, in Germany, they like order. So first of all, you're going to imagine yourself in Berlin, Germany. Now, back in the 80s, Berlin was still under communist rule. So they had no freedom. The people couldn't leave Berlin. It was very sad because earlier, before World War II, Berlin was a place for artists to really thrive. And then when the walls came down, or the walls went up, you could say, and they lost their freedom, things changed in Berlin. So when they got their freedom back at the end of the 80s, wow, people were so excited to be able to go to Berlin again. So we've got Berlin as an example here. And like any urban center, it's a big city. If you haven't been there, it's full of people and places to go. And it's really a fast-paced city as well. Well, like any urban center, it's a riot. Meaning it's a lot of stuff together. Different sound, sights, and people. It's definitely a place you want to go if you get a chance to go to Germany. Because Berlin is not like some of the other cities which were not under communist control. And so it's fun to go and see how they've opened up society since they've regained freedom. But observe closely enough, and you might be surprised by the conduct of the locals. This word conduct is a noun. It's not conduct, which we usually use as a verb, right? Conduct experiments, conduct the choir, conduct an orchestra. This is conduct. And its pronunciation's different. Conduct and conduct. Conduct means how you behave yourself. If you're in a class and you have a very strict teacher, you will have to have very good conduct. And if you don't, you're going to get in trouble. And you might get, your parents might be called in because you were being naughty in class. So conduct is how you behave yourself.
Exactly. So we're imagining going to Berlin, which I believe in German is pronounced Berlin or something close to that. And of course, now Berlin is the capital of Germany. It was not during the Eastern Germany phase there when there was only West Berlin. And at that time it was Bonn, but it's now Berlin. And of course, it's kind of a lively city there.
Big city, yeah.
It's got different sound sites and people, but you'll be surprised by the conduct or the behavior of local people in Berlin, as I suppose you would find in other German cities like Munich and Hamburg and Essen and Mönchengladbach or whatever. So, of course, you'll be surprised at how they act. Here's what you'll see. You'll find less jaywalking, fewer illegally parked cars, rigorously enforced quiet hours, and a certain strictness to every administrative procedure. So this is what you'll find. This is what you'll see if you go to Berlin or any other German city. You'll find less jaywalking. Jaywalking means people don't cross at the crosswalks or the zebra crossing as they're called here in Taiwan. Jaywalking is quite common, so you'll find less of that. Jaywalking here would use the word less. But if you're talking about cars, that's countable, so you would say fewer illegally parked cars. And you see illegally parked cars all over the place here in Taiwan and in other parts of the world, but you won't see that so much in Germany.
This is a really important grammar point that Tom just pointed out. Less and fewer. We even have a lot of Americans who use the wrong word. Because usually we're not very careful. So less always goes with non-count nouns and fewer goes with countable. So I could say I have less money than Tom, but I have more plants at home than he does. So make sure you're always using the right one. Fewer for countable, less for non-count.And you'll impress people who are listening. They'll think, oh, they learned that correctly. And they rigorously enforce quiet hours. So probably between the hours of 11 at night and 6 a.m., you need to be quiet. Now, in New York City, people are noisy. Your neighbors don't care if you want to sleep. That's just life. But in German cities, they try to be more polite to their neighbors and their community. And there's a certain strictness to every administrative procedure. What does administrative mean, Tom?
Well, having to do with an administration, which means how laws are enforced and how they're administered, etc., etc. So it has to do with running a business and setting up a bunch of rules and things like that. So, of course, when things happen in Germany, you have to go through all the channels. You can't bribe people, of course. It just requires going through the police and the government. And so, of course, there's a strictness to all administrative procedures. And yes, indeed, there's no, again, as I said, no bribery and things like that. So these all demonstrate the German virtue of Ordnung, which again is the German word for order. And while this simply translates into order in other languages, in truth, it indicates a cultural value that is completely instinctive to Germans. So if something's instinctive, that means it's kind of built in. They're born with this idea, this tendency. It's instinctive. So, of course, a lot of people have instinctive abilities that other people don't have. Hey, I could hear that helicopter coming from miles away before everybody else could. I have this instinctive ability to hear things from far away.
Yeah, it's something that happens inside you. It's natural. It's a natural thing. We talk about how animals are instinctive in their settings. They know what they can eat, what animals to avoid because they know they might be attacked. That's an instinctive feeling or instinctive response. So yeah, some of this is just instinctive to Germans. They're born that way and that's how they feel. We are going to now take a quick break and listen to our Chinese teacher who is also very instinctive and knowing what to focus on to help you guys the best. We're going to listen and then we'll return.Hello
everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是4月份 Unit9 Ordnung muss sein, The German Value of Order。这个单元是文艺选填的练习题，内容让我们可以进一步了解德国人的价值观。我们在主题解说前，老师要提醒大家，答题时记得要先看看有哪些选项可以选，先大致把这些选项的词性标示出来。虽然有些单字不止一种词性，但我们根据句子的结构，可以判断该题空格应该填入什么词性的单字，再根据文意找出正确选项，这样子答题会比较有效率哦。我们现在一起来解题吧。我们先解第一题，请先看到前3句。想象自己人在德国柏林，就像其他市中心一样，这里五光十色，人声鼎沸，车水马龙。不过空格 closely enough， 你可能会对当地的民众行为举止感到讶异。closely enough， 够近的话 ，closely 是副词。一般而言，只有动词或形容词会用副词修饰，所以我们应该在选项里找个动词。根据前后文意，我们选 A observe。构成祈使句，由逗点后的 and 连接其后的独立子句，表示如果你够仔细观察，会发现当地人和其他城市的人截然不同。好，接着请看第2题。由于第2题空格前有对等连接词连接，我们知道对等连接词前后都是同一个词性。既然前面都是名词，包括 cars, ours， 所以接下来第2题空格也是名词。根据前后文意，我们选 G, strictness， 表示还有对每个行政程序都有一定程度的 严格。第三题很简单，这个句子没有动词，所以我们需要一个动词。根据前后文意，所以答案选 I, demonstrate， 这些都展现出德国秩序的美德。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue with our lesson. We will continue with the second paragraph here. It says, the phrase Ordnung muss sein, there must be order, dates back around 500 years to renowned religious reformer Martin Luther. So it dates back. It goes back to 500 years ago. And at that time, we have a religious reformer by the name of Martin Luther. And he was renowned, which means he was famous. And he kind of reformed religion there. I suppose that's why we have the Lutheran Church, because of him.
He reformed the Catholic Church. He felt like a lot of things in the Catholic Church were wrong, and he wanted to get back to the scriptures, the Bible. So he did start his own religion, and Tom's right, it's called the Lutheran Church now. But he was a reformer. If you're a reformer, you take something and you change it a little to make it better. Now, he proclaimed in his writings that Ordnung muss sein unter den Leuten. Here, there must be order among the people, was really important. So it goes back to Martin Luther. That's what we're going back in history and saying this is where this saying or this phrase originally came from. If you proclaim something, you usually do it officially or you announce publicly that something is happening. Proclaim. For example, your president might proclaim, today is the day we're going to honor all the teachers or all the heroes that have helped us in life. So you proclaim something when you do it officially or publicly. So he was proclaiming in his writings, which were then put into book form, of course, and reprinted and distributed to people, that order was very important to the culture.
Right, so again, he said there must be order among the people, but scholars say this referred to submission to church authority rather than order in daily life. So he said this more in reference to the church and not so much in reference to daily life. So here it's referring to submission, which means basically you give yourself to the church. They are your authority. They're your boss, basically. You submit to them. Whatever the church says, you do it. You don't rebel, or else you're going to go to hell.
This latter interpretation of Ordnung was made world famous by a more contemporary person, and that's German President Paul von Hindenburg in 1934, right before World War I broke out, World War II broke out. For Germans today, this notion or idea is so inherent. Again, inherent just means instinctive, something that's inside you, you're born with it, that it needs no discussion at all. So they just kind of take this for granted that they need to be orderly. We've got a German culture expert who says, hey, they don't think about it any more than someone thinks about grammar while they're trying to speak. So it's something that's innate, inherent, instinctive, something they're born with. Moving on to the final paragraph, it says, however, Germans also have a motto. A motto is just a saying that you kind of live by, or it could be a corporation's motto, like Nike says, just do it. A motto, something that's pretty famous and that you want to kind of remember and live by. It says here that they have a motto that order is only half of life and disorder, the other half. Disorder, of course, is chaos. When things are not arranged orderly, there's a lot of chaos or disorder during natural disasters, of course. Or if you've ever gone to an elementary school, kids on the playground, there's a lot of disorder and chaos. They just kind of do what they want to do. So it's not just order. They believe that disorder is also important.
Right, they know that you should strive for order in society, but also you can't get rid of disorder. That's also part of life and maybe even beneficial as well. Even stuffy Germany has room for disorder, as evidenced by its frenzied sports games and thriving underground music scene. So we think of Germany as being stuffy. They're kind of stuffed up, I guess you could say. They're kind of proper, and they don't have a sense of humor and things like that. Everything's so serious. So we think they are that way, but they have room for disorder. If you watch them at the World Cup, for example, the German fans are just going nuts. They're frenzied, they're crazy, they're wild, and they also have a thriving underground music scene. Yeah, lots of interesting bands come from Germany, like I think Nina Hagen is from Germany, and Alphaville, of course, was from Germany. Kraftwerk is also from Germany. They're pretty wild bands.
Yeah, especially Berlin. Berlin has crazy underground music that you should go and check out if you have a chance. It says here, however, unwritten rules, meaning these are rules people know about, but they're not in any written form. They still confine disorder to certain contexts or certain areas of life. You can't just have disorder anywhere you want. In Berlin, for example, people can go nude, paint graffiti, or even take part in illegal activities like drugs, as long as they're in the correct place to do so. So you kind of have to pick your places where you want to be disorderly or not obey all the rules or obey all the laws. And you see that a lot in Berlin for sure.
Right, so yeah, they probably have designated places for you to paint graffiti like they do here in Taiwan. But of course, in New York, it seems like people are painting graffiti everywhere.
Yeah.
And so to them, everything has a place. So you can't go walking down the street naked, but maybe you can be naked at a nude beach, for example. But again, they have to be in the correct place. Now, Ordnung is less about following the rules to the letter and more about knowing the right time and place to do things, which is basically what I said. You just need to know the rules, and you need to follow them to the letter. To the letter just emphasizes that you should follow the rules exactly the way they're written. No deviation, no exceptions. So you should follow the rules, yes, but you also need to know the right time and place to do things. You should probably know when you can let your hair down and go nuts.
Yeah, you could also say they need to follow the rules strictly. To the letter is just another way to say strictly. So this elaborate dance of order and disorder reveals that German society, like any other, is complex. And that Ordnung represents just one part. Yeah, they're not just one type of people. Of course, there's a lot of variety there. Elaborate's one of our vocab words. It means something that's kind of complicated. It's maybe complicated in its design and planning, or maybe the parts that are involved are quite detailed. Or there are a lot of parts involved, elaborate. Nothing that's simple. So it's quite elaborate. There's a lot involved. That's why we're calling it complex. Just like any other culture or people, the Germans are very varied and they're complex. But they do have this idea that, there should be order in parts of life for sure.
And I suppose that's why their cars are so reliable, because they rely on order so much and they're high quality. And of course, lots of people want to buy German cars and other German products as well. And they want to know German people and make friends with them. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. It's time to listen to our explanation auf Deutsch in German. No, I'm kidding. It will be in Chinese.
现在请看到第4题。宗教改革的推手马丁路德声明，群众必须要有秩序，但是学者说这空格对教会权威的顺从，而非日常的生活的秩序。因为 but 后面的这个独立子句主词是 scholars 学者，而动词是 say 学者说，而 say 之后其实是个省略了 that 的名词子句，所以我们知道 this后面必须有一个动词。根据前后文意，答案选呢 B refer to。本句的意思是，学者说这不是指对日常生活中的秩序，而是指对教会权威的顺从。好，第5题 ，this 指称词之后，介系词 of 之前要填名词，或者这种秩序的空格是因为德国总统保罗·冯·辛登堡在1934年而世界出名的。根据前后文意，答案选 F interpretation。整句文意是西元1934年，德国总统保罗·冯·辛登堡使得后者这种对秩序的诠释举世闻名。第6题，对现在的德国人来说，这种想法如此空格，所以完全无需讨论。So that 句型中需要有形容词或副词跟在 so 后面。根据前后文意，答案选 C inherent。整句文意是对于现今的德国人来说，这种观念是如此与生俱来的，根本不需要讨论。接下来我们看第3段第7题。然而德国人也有一句座右铭，秩序只是生活的其中一半，混乱则是另一半。即使是一本正经的德国也有混乱的空间，可以从疯狂的体育比赛和兴盛的地下音乐界来怎么样？空格 even 一直到 disorder 已经是一个完整的句子，所以后面如果再加任何独立子句都必须有连接词，如果没有连接词就不能够加独立子句，所以逗点之后其实是 as 开头的关系子句。as 在这个子句当中是准关代，代替前面的句子，即使是一本正经的德国也有混乱的空间。而根据前后文意，答案选 J evidence by， 表示疯狂的体育赛事和蓬勃发展的地下音乐界证明这件事。而 as 原本应该接 is，as is evidenced by its frenzied sports games and thriving underground music scene。不过这个 be 动词 is 常省略，也可说 as evidenced by。第8题，这个句子的主词是 unwritten rules， 少了动词，意思是然而不成文的规定仍然空格混乱在某些情况下，所以我们需要的选项是个动词，而后根据前后文意，答案选 D confine。第9题，我们看到空格前有个对等连接词 or， 就知道空格前后要有一样的词性。前面是动词 go nude paint graffiti， 所以第9题也需要找个动词，而且是原形。根据前后文，答案选 E take part in 参与。最后第10题 reveals 透露，后面所接的是 that 引导的名词子句 German society like any other is， 如同德国如同任何其他的社会也是空格。在 be 动词 is 之后，我们需要形容词当补语，所以答案选 H complex。全句文意表示这支精心设计的秩序与混乱之舞，展现了德国社会与其他任何社会一样是复杂的，而秩序只代表其中一部分。以上就是我们针对文意选填所做的解题，谢谢大家。
That brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Dankeschön. Thank you all for joining us, and please join us again next time for another edition of our program. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.